So what are the challenges that you think are facing youth in 2018?
I feel as though the killing of our sisters, you know, it's a huge challenge, and I feel as though nothing's been done. And if, you know, our president or anyone in this country would actually take this killing serious, then I mean all will be well.
I think one thing that is not taken into account for is depression. There's a lot of things that happen when you reach the tertiary stage, and I think depression is one thing that we don't take into account because there's a lot that happens. Fees, for example, fees are very expensive.
Discrimination. I would say on my side, because I'm a student, actually I'm a farmer, I experience a lot of discrimination in terms of race.
The challenges that most of the youth are facing these days is unemployment. There's a very high rate of unemployment. Yes, we do get learnerships and scholarships, but as soon as we're done, they do not offer us the jobs or the opportunities to work.
Young people in South Africa are living on the cusp of the digital revolution with all the comforts and advantages and opportunities, that the information age has to offer. But they're seemingly far from satisfied, many of them excluded from these opportunities. Why are young people battling to survive in post-apartheid South Africa? And are they suffering from a crippling sense of entitlement, or has Generation X failed them? I'm Cathy Mohlahlana. This is our nightly look at South Africa under the Ramaphosa administration. You're watching As It Happens. Well, my guest tonight on As It Happens, the National Youth Development Agency's Sifiso Mtsweni and Kabelo Chabalala. He's the chairperson and founder of the Young Men Movement. Thanks for your time tonight, gentlemen. You know, we opened with those interviews that were done with young people in Johannesburg, expressing their feelings around Youth Month. And certainly, especially this year, one feels a weight of heaviness when we think about the state of youth in the country and what their quality of life is. Kabelo, perhaps let me speak to you about it firstly. When you reflect on it, you know, what comes to mind?
Good evening, Cathy. It saddens my heart, and I think one of the things that the producer picked up was my article reflecting on Youth Month and what we stand for as the young people. And I realized that we still need to empower our young people with education. It seems as though 42 years later, those that fought for this education, it's as if we fought for nothing. I reflected looking back at the community where I come from, whereby for me to be where I am today, it was through education. And I believe that those kids from the villages of Pankopake or Mametlake will still need to be awarded opportunities in education so that they can better their lives and you know, deal with the poverty that is at home or in their community. So I still feel as though we need to push more of these young people to get educated so that they can alleviate the poverty at home. So I think 42 years later, 25 years into democracy, 24, I mean, we still need to be doing more because it looks like there's a great lack in that department.
Sifiso, now you're part of an agency that is tasked with developing young people and creating these opportunities. Firstly, how do you understand the challenges that face young people today as the NYDA?
Well, good evening, Cathy, and thank you very much for having us here. Indeed, there are challenges that face young people, but I do also believe that post-1994 era, there has been some advances that have been made. For instance, as you know, today, and the advent of the pronouncement of free education, we've got over 700,000 young black South Africans that are in universities. Just last year, we had over 400,000 graduates that have come out of the system. But indeed, there are challenges that we still need to confront, unemployment being one of the biggest challenges that face young people. The National Youth Development Agency is an agency that's supposed to mainstream youth development within government, within civil society, within the private sector, to raise those issues that face young people and to bring about certain solutions that young people do require. As you know very well, we've got various programs that we actually championing. One of those being the youth economic participation. How do we ensure that young people, as much as they're looking for jobs, how do we create them as job creators, as entrepreneurs that will be able to start, creating jobs for other young people, but also start being innovative. When you started, you spoke about a digital era. We're moving towards the 4th industrial revolution, which means that the mind plays a very critical role. So indeed, that's what we are here for, and we've been able to assist quite a few young people.
And certainly the issue of free education is to be applauded, but I think as you reflect on it, Kabelo, in your article, you go through the barriers that exist even once somebody is in an institution of higher learning, that access is but just the starting point of what one's experience throughout their entire education career will look like, especially when you're coming from a disadvantaged area.
That's very true. And I mean, we go around the hype of economic emancipation, but as Steve Biko said, how do we then get financial emancipation if we are not social emancipation? How do we then get to think beyond what we are, this rhetorics that we are throwing around? Because these kids get to university. I have young boys who are university now. They've had social challenges to adapt from being in that small community or village, getting into this urban place where it's the University of Pretoria or it's the University of Johannesburg, whereby the life and the social space is completely different to where they come from. They are expected to excel academically, but socially there's still a transition that they need to make. They need to adapt to these new spaces. So I think we need to still go back to what Steve Biko was emphasizing, to say that let's start with a clearer social space where people are socially advanced, where we are emancipated socially. So, because I believe that for people to be economically emancipated, we still need to have them to be socially emancipated, that us achieving that economic emancipation will not be a dream that we see in our lifetime if people are not socially emancipated, because there are bigger and greater social ills that our society is facing, the femicide, the gender-based violence that we are facing. All this stuff are part of our social, our social limits. We need to reconstruct that social being of our community in order for us to achieve that part. So
and there is a bias that exists at institutions of higher learning. You will experience us and them, especially according to where one may find themselves on the economic bracket.
Correct.
And certainly lots of students are wearing the burden of not just having to excel academically, but also where they come from. Some students are sending stipends home from whatever little monies that they're able to make.
I agree with you, and I mean, others will call it black tax, but you leave your mom who didn't even finish matric, or your parents are still struggling to put 1 and 2 together to ensure that you survive in that space. So there's already that social burden. You are in Gauteng, you try to work weekend jobs so that you make ends meet. So we need to look back and say, how do we then get the balance socially, and so that these kids can be taken off that burden, to say that I still need to carry my family. And what is that agency doing? Because it's put there to help us move from one space to another. But we've never actually even seen what is their goal to ensure that they help these kids. Now they're talking about economic emancipation, but what were they doing before we started repeating this rhetoric of economic emancipation? Were they helping us socially? I don't see the changes. We're talking about 7,000 kids that are in university. That doesn't only include the black kids, it includes the white kids who are in fact predominant in a university like the University of Pretoria. So we need to come back and say that, outline what you stand for so that you can go ahead with it. Like we do at the Young Men Movement, it's about helping young boys. We know what we want to do. We're not going to listen to the rhetorics that are going to move us from, or whatever wind that is blowing left or right. We need to know, what is your vision? Go to it, work on it, achieve it, and then you can move on to the next step.
Sifiso, would you like an opportunity to respond to that?
Well, I think there are two things. One, I think the issue of social challenges that face South Africa is not issues that are unique to young people. It's issues that are unique to society as a whole. We grew up in an environment, by the way, where a child was raised by the village, was not necessarily raised by, the homestead. But I think one thing that my colleague fails to understand is that the aftermath of apartheid has destroyed the very fabric that defines us as a society. But what it has brought quite to the fore is a whole issue around poverty. As we sit here, there are people who are going to bed without anything to eat. As we sit here, there are people who are seated there who are unemployed with degrees sitting at home. So the issue of economic emancipation becomes very important. Yes, indeed. Let's deal with the social challenges and the social fabrics. That's why organizations such as his are quite important. But for us to really say to people that prolong your hunger, prolong this and that, I mean, you just made an example about kids who send stipends back at home, meaning that poverty is quite a very important issue that we need to fight. That's why we are here to say, yes, let's deal with the social, let's have partnerships, but let's deal with the economic situation in its proper sense. And I want to make a quick example. Just last year, for instance, I spoke about 400,000 graduates that have come out of the schooling system. Most of these graduates today are standing in street corners with placards saying that, look, I've got a degree in financial management, accounting, whatever, but I still cannot get a job. Why? Because the job market is locked. There's still draconian rules such as experience, where young people are required to just have experience, even when they have got an education system. So those are the things that we need to resolve. We need to open that particular market. We need to ensure that young people enter the economic space, then start engaging on what type of society do we want to create, because it's one issue that we've never really debated. To say post-1994, in dealing with all these challenges, what type of South Africa do we want? We spoke about the Rainbow Nation. What is the makeup of a Rainbow Nation? What is the ideology of the Rainbow Nation? What is it that we need to do as South Africans? And I think that debate is important, but we must never downplay the importance of ensuring that we economically emancipate young people in this country.
All right. Well, I'm going to continue this conversation with the both of you in a moment. As It Happens continues after the short break.